Hi there, and thank you for tuning in. Yesterday, Danish Customs finally released my Nikon D4, and I've had it now for 24 hours. And I want to give you, while I have it fresh in mind, my immediate impression of the Nikon D4. I will do so relative to the Nikon D700 because I was actually in the market for Nikon D700, but I, for various reasons, ended up with the Nikon D4. And maybe also if you're in the market for Nikon D700, you may also have had a look at the D4, and maybe this video can help you make up your mind whether the D4 could be an alternative you should also consider. So when I started to look for a second copy of the D700, I found that it was difficult to find a copy that was in a condition that I could accept. I think many of those copies that are out there, and mind you, this camera was produced from 2008 to 2012, so it's only natural that they are well used, those copies that are in circulation, right? I simply found that many of them looked like they had been rolling down a mountainside for the last 3 months, or they had a shutter count that was, way too high. And I want to buy a camera that can be with me for some years. I really like the Nikon DSLRs, and I'm not in this for, a few months. I want to have a camera that will be with me. And I simply had problems finding a D700. So that sort of made me look for alternatives. The second thing is that the D4, when it was brand new, it was $6,000. That's a lot of money and way out of my budget. Today I got a copy that is around $1,100, maybe a little bit more, a little less than €1,000, and that is much more acceptable to me. And actually I was so lucky that the copy I got looks like it's brand new. This one only has 18,000 on the shutter count, and judging from the serial number on the bottom here, it was one of the last that rolled off the production line, as far as I'm being able to Google. So I've been very lucky to find a copy that is almost as new. The buttons and dials also feels like that. So, a professional level camera for $1,100, a little less than €1,000, I think I've been very lucky. The second thing that attracted me to the D4 was that the shutter count is set to 400,000. And knowing that this copy I got only has 18,000 on the clock means that I have a lot of shots in front of me. And so I have a camera that I think can stay with me for many years. The last thing was that I was curious, to be quite honest, how is it to own a professional level camera? And I hope to find out with the D4. So curiosity definitely also played its part in my decision to go for the D4. Being 4 years younger and significantly more expensive, the D4 of course is technically a more capable camera than the D700, and I just want to point to a few things from the spec list where there are significant differences between these two cameras. I will also make a link in the description below so you can see all the details if you want to really dive into the nuts and bolts of the difference between these two cameras. But obviously this one is 4 years younger, it has better dynamic range, it has a much more advanced autofocus system, it does video, it has 16 megapixels, meaning 4 more than the D700, and then, and this is perhaps the most important, it is blazing fast. It can offload data from the sensor in an astonishing speed, and this is why this camera is considered the camera, or was considered the camera for especially wildlife and sports photographers, anything that involves speed and motion. This camera could shoot many frames per second. I believe it was 11 frames per second, which was, and still today is, an awful lot. So, of course, no doubt that the D4 technically, that will also be strange with that price tag of $6,000, would not be technically a better camera than the D700. Other than the obvious fact that the D4 comes with what I would call the built-in battery grip, there are a few other changes that I want to highlight that I have noticed working with this camera just the first 24 hours or so. First thing is that it has dual card slot, and maybe that's not important to you, but I have actually been on shoots where I thought, wow, if I lose what I have on my cards today, then I will be a very sad man. So dual cards to me is increasingly becoming more and more important as I do more and more professional work. Maybe that's not important to you, but definitely for me, that gives me comfort that I will not lose vital shots. The second thing is, and this is something that really annoys me with the D700, is that, and I'm very happy to see that the D4, it has 100% coverage when it comes to the viewfinder. I find the D700's 95% is really annoying because I try to frame my pictures very precisely, so that this one has 100% is really great news to me. Another thing is that also in the viewfinder there is a metering scale that sits to the right instead of it being crammed in the bottom, and that means it's simply easier to read. So a nice feature, but maybe more nice to have than need to have, if you ask me. Most of the buttons on the camera are backlit, and that I really look forward to. I was out shooting with the Sony the other day, and I do a lot of low light photography outside, and I simply couldn't read the buttons when I tried to do a playback of some of the pictures. And I look forward to the buttons being backlit. I know it's a small thing, but these small things are what helps you in your daily life, right? Another small thing is that the camera has now a dedicated ISO button that also allows you to switch between auto ISO and manual ISO, if I can call it like that. And that's one of the things that was really small things, I agree, but it has really annoyed me with the D700 is you have to go into the menu system to select auto ISO. With this one, there's a dedicated button. You just push that one, you change the ISO here on the main or the rear dial, and on the front dial you switch between auto ISO and manual ISO. Really something that I look forward to. I know it's a small thing, but you know, it really annoys me with the D700 is designed like that. The Nikon D4 also comes with a dedicated live view button, and that means it works like I know it from the D750, which is much easier to work with than the somewhat strange implementation, if you ask me, on the D700. There I think you can see that the D700 is an older body and that the live view was one of the first implementations Nikon did. Here on the D4 we have a more modern implementation. Finally, maybe as a little bit a strange thing, but listen, the shutter sound. It is, to me, I get the impression I get when if you ever try to drive a fast car, but in cruise mode, even though you're not going fast, you can tell that that car is built for speed, right? And when I listen to this, you know, this one is built for speed. And of course I can impress you with the machine gun sound, but that's actually not so much the point because it is a fast camera and everybody knows that, but just the sound of the shutter, it is extremely controlled. There's a deep sound, there's not any, you know, there's a very tight and dry sound, right? So as if everything is under control, right? And I know this is not the biggest of arguments, but it leaves me with the impression that the build quality of this camera is simply second to none. Also what you would expect for a $6,000 camera, right? But still, this is what I have really noticed working for a few hours with this camera. It has a tight and dry shutter sound. So I took the D4 for a spin, and as you can see here, it produces absolutely beautiful pictures. I felt at home right away. The D4 is really easy to work with if you come from a D750 or D700. The button layouts and the menus are very similar. In terms of curiosity, I would say I'm surprised, and this is praise to the D700, I'm surprised how close to the D4 the D700 is in terms of shooting experience. They are very, very similar. Of course, some of the quirks that I have mentioned, they have been removed from the D4, but the D700's shooting experience with a battery grip is very, very close to that of a D4. Finally, I want to show you a picture that we've done a print of. It's 120 centimeters across and 80 centimeters down. And it's printed based on an image taken by the D700. 12 megapixels that is. And as you can see, I'm not missing any resolution at all here, provided of course that you have a natural viewing distance. If you want to crop a lot, say you want to go really close to those 4 birds that are in the water there, then of course you may need more resolution than 12 megapixel. Also, if you are printing very large and your viewer can get very close to your picture, then you may also need more resolution than this. But when it comes to a natural viewing distance, I think that 12 megapixels or 16 megapixels as it is with the D4 is more than enough. I think it's funny to be able to make such a big print here when you know that most modern cameras has much more resolution than that. That's it from me. Thank you for watching. As always, take care. Bye bye.